As Steve was saying, I'm retired until something better comes along. And I was running the risk of being called a conspiracy theorist. I was looking at the World Trade Center, 9/11, one day. And I'm looking at that and I'm going, you know, I'm a building technologist. And those are steel frame buildings and those are aluminum aircraft. And I looked at that and I said, that video shows that airplane being totally swallowed up by a steel frame building. And I'm going, that is an impossibility. What is going on here? And then I looked at the hole in the ground in Pennsylvania, and they tell me that the ground swallowed the airplane up. And oh boy, you know, what's going on here? What's going on here? And the reason why that is significant is because it is a turning point in American, whatever you want to call it, external affairs. You know, obviously it was a turning point that began the war on terror. And so it's a significant event. And so in my research, you know, the old saying, you know, follow the money. And I basically came to the conclusion that there is some kind of an oligarchy behind this. And that oligarchy includes an international banking cartel. And so where does that leave me? How does that affect us as Canada? So I started looking at Canada and the history of banking in Canada, and I began to realize that Canada has a mechanism to extract is not the right word, but to pull ourselves out of this mess that the world is in, and it's called the Bank of Canada. So let me begin here. And I want to give you some information on where we are now as a country, what the Bank of Canada is, and how it can be used. I'm going to start with a quote by Mayor Rothschild, 1790. He says, "Let me issue and control a nation's money, and I care not who makes the laws." Now, he had 5 sons. And each one went to a different city in Europe. One stayed in Berlin, one went to London, one went to Paris, one went to Naples, and one went to Austria, the country of Austria. Now Nathan Rothschild, sometime later, said, "I care not what puppet is placed upon the throne of England. The man who controls the British money supply controls the British Empire, and I control the British money supply." So you have it right there in a nutshell. He who controls the money supply controls the nations. And that's it in a nutshell. Pure and simple. In 1812, Nathan Rothschild crashed the British stock market and essentially took control of the Bank of England. Now, what that did was that solidified the 5 Rothschild sons' control over the finances of Northern Europe. Now, through colonialism, by 1914, Northern Europe controlled 80% of the world's landmass, 80% of the world's population, and 84% of the world's economy. That was through colonialism. Now, colonialism then was done through gunpowder and steel. You know, it's not difficult to overcome a nation who's fighting you with bows and arrows when you've got gunpowder and steel. Today's neo-colonialism is not done through gunpowder and steel, it is done through debt. It is done through debt. Daniel Webster, you know, he's well known for a dictionary. He made this statement. He said, "Of all the contrivances for cheating the labor classes of mankind, none has been more effective than that which deludes them with paper money." And I'm here tonight to let you know that I believe Canadians are being deluded with paper money. Let me talk about the national debt. Canada's total debt is rising by $74.6 million a day. The federal debt alone is rising by $49 million a day. That's $2 million an hour. Our national government is going into debt at the rate of $2 million an hour. Further into debt. According to Wikipedia, our national external debt, now what that is, our external debt is the amount that government and public owe to external sources, sources outside of the country. Now, our external debt today is $1.33 trillion. Trillion dollars. That's over $29,000 a person, or over $118,000, nearly $200,000 for a family of four. It's 64% of our gross domestic product. We are the 15th highest ranked country in the world as far as debt goes. $620 billion of that is the federal government debt. And that's $17,700 a person. Now, in 1974, your share was only $847. Today, it's over $17,000. Canadians are paying, this is according to the Committee on Monetary and Economic Reform, Canadians today are paying $170 million per day on interest only. They have a country of 35 million paying $170 million a day on interest only on their debt. That's $62 billion a year. $1,700 for each Canadian. Now, in 2009, both provincially and federally, the governments collected nearly $240 billion in taxes. I will tell you something. If we were to use the Bank of Canada, that number could be zero. Over 25% of the taxes collected is going to interest only. And that's at a day when the government is paying nearly 0%. 0%. What do you think would happen if the interest rates went up to 10%? Those numbers would go up tenfold. What do you think that would do to our country? Bankruptcy? Now, I want to share something with you that I don't think a lot of people know. You know, we talk about the U.S. bank bailout and how the U.S. government gave $700 billion to bankers and everybody was upset. Americans flooded Congress with emails and phone calls and letters saying, do not do this, and they did it anyway. Well, I'm going to tell you something. Canada also bailed out their banks, but not many people know about it. You know, we've been told that our banking system is sound and, we don't need to bail it out. Let me give you some quotes. Jim Flaherty, Minister of Finances. We have not had to put any taxpayers' money into our financial system in Canada, nor do I anticipate that we'll be obliged to do so. Stephen Harper, Prime Minister. It is true, we have the only banks in the Western world that are not looking at bailouts or anything like that. The fact of the matter is, they called it increased liquidity. The U.S. just called it what it was, a bailout. It began in October 2008, and by March 2009, Canada's 5 major banks had received $114 billion. That's 30% larger per capita than the U.S. bank bailout. 30% larger per capita. We've got 1/10 the population. They bailed out $700 billion. We bailed out $114 billion with 10% of the people. The equivalent would be over $1 trillion. And yet they're telling us they didn't need to bail us out. $1 What they did was they bailed out the banks in exchange for mortgage-backed securities. What are mortgage-backed securities? What that means is, if you default on your home, the government owns it. So now, if you default on your home, you don't have to pay the mortgage anymore. Yes, you do, because you're going to have to pay it through your taxes. And what that did is that allowed the banks to print another $114 billion for people. Let me give you the breakdown. The CIBC bailout was $121 billion. That was 148% of its stock value. They paid more and gave them more in bailout than the place was worth. BMO, $17 billion, 118% of its stock value. Scotiabank, 100% of its stock value. They could have bought 4 of the banks for what they gave them in bailouts. So the bailouts came to $114 billion. Now listen to this. First quarter profits of those same banks, $3 trillion. $3 billion. The first quarter. They got $114 billion from the government, and their profits were $3 billion for the first quarter. Now here's the kicker. The 5 CEOs of those same banks in 2011, their salaries were $51.4 million. 225 times average. The Calgary Herald said that the Canadian bankers are the highest paid CEOs in North America. Our government has given them $114 billion to the highest paid CEOs in North America. I'm going to tell you something, they ought to be wearing masks. We're not talking, bonus here. We're talking salary every year. The Toronto Dominion Bank CEO, he receives $11.3 million a year. Not a bonus, a year. John Kenneth Galbraith made this statement. He said, the study of money, above all other fields in economics, is one in which complexity is used to disguise truth, not reveal it. The process by which banks create money is so simple that the mind is repelled. They like to couch it in a lot of fancy terms, but the fact of the matter is it's very, very simple. It's so simple it's hard for you to believe that's really what's going on. Ron Paul made the statement, he said, the debt-based money system is designed to transfer wealth from the poor and middle class to the rich elite, and that's the truth. The whole system is designed to steal money from you and give it to a banking cartel. Now, I want to talk about the debt-based money system of Canada. This is all good news, isn't it? Sometimes this is hard to take, but listen to me, friends. If you don't know the truth, you're just going to be blindly led until bankruptcy. The nation is bankrupt. Today, the Bank of Canada prints about 2% of the money in circulation in Canada. That 2% is represented by the dollar bills and the coins, the cash. 98% is created by borrowing from private banks. When you borrow money from a private bank, they create that money and deposit it in your account. And all it is numbers on a computer screen. There's absolutely no value behind it except for the value you give it. Most Canadians think that when you go down and borrow money, you're borrowing money that somebody else has deposited. But that's not how it works at all. When you go down and borrow money, they create it. 98% of the currency in Canada is produced by private banks lending money. If everybody was to pay their loans back, there would be no money supply. Do you follow that? It's called a debt-based money system. The Debt-based economic system. Let me give you a good example. When you take out a loan, say you want to buy a car for $10,000. So you go down to the bank and you want to borrow $10,000. What do? They go to the computer and they just enter $10,000 and deposit it in your account. You take the money out and you go and pay for the car. That is new money put into the economic system of the country. If you want to buy a house for $300,000, and that would be the going rate of a 1976 house in Saskatoon in an older area, $300,000. You could get a mortgage at 3%, a 25-year mortgage, 3%, at a 5-year term. Your payments would be about $1,440. So you go and you get a $300,000 mortgage. What happens is they create $300,000 and put it in your account. That's $300,000 new dollars in our system. That is how money is created in Canada today. It's created by private banks at interest for profit. And I'm telling you right now, it is a fraudulent system that we are living in. What do you think would happen if interest rates go to 8%? I did the calculations. Your payments would go to about $2,700 a month. Now, after tax, average wage, the average wage in Saskatoon is about $5,000 before taxes. After taxes, about $2,400.
I'm really sorry to interrupt. If there's anyone parked out front, unfortunately, apparently they're doing snow removal. They're starting to possibly tow vehicles.
On which side of the street?
Both. Apparently they have signs up. I don't know. I don't have a vehicle, so I didn't get to check personally. But if you do have a vehicle up front, you might want to go out and move it quickly.
Can we take a pause?
Okay.
2 minutes?
Sorry.
Okay.
No problem. Hey, thanks for telling us.
On this side so far, but